Hey guys, welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people conform to the letter but not the spirit of a request. And in today's Ripestories video, what would you do if a brand new aggressive manager stole hours from your paycheck and claimed it was just the letter of the law? I'll tell you what I did. I weaponized his own rigid rules against him, and by the time I was done playing his game, his career was in ashes. And the first one is titled Malicious Compliance at Home Depot. So this happened about 5 years ago, and I haven't been to the Home Depot in question in a long time. Names have been changed for privacy. In high school, I was working at the local Home Depot as a head cashier. I kept track of all the active registers and made sure things ran smoothly. I held this position for quite some time, like 1 to 2 years, and enjoyed it pretty well. Customers were nice and my coworkers were mostly craftsmen and gardeners, all with interesting stories to share. Before we go any further though, let me explain something. I am allergic to nearly every form of pollen, and I mean every form. I take allergy medication, but even then, if I am in close proximity to flowers for too long, like over 30 minutes, I will begin to break out in hives and throw up most of the time. So after about 3 months working in the winter, the spring season was upon us, the worst season for my allergies, and one day about 3 of our garden section cashiers called off sick. Usually they are pretty reliable people, so I had no problem finding people to cover for them. As I come to my manager to inform them of the position changes, my manager just looks at me and says, "You can handle the garden section on your own, can't you?" I inform my manager that I could cover it for at most 15 minutes before my allergies flare up and I'll have to leave. He then states, "We don't have any documents on file that state that you're not fit to work in the garden section, so unless you come to me with a doctor's note stating your allergies, I couldn't give less of a damn." I don't know who pooped in his Cheerios that morning, but I complied, saying, "I just want to be sure of what you are asking me. You want me to work in a section which is hazardous to my health instead of placing equally capable employees in that section?" "Did I stutter?" he said. "Okay, sure," I said. I make my way down to the garden section, and immediately my eyes are stinging. I decide that I'm gonna stick it out for my boss's sake, no matter how bad my service then actually becomes. The first 10 minutes are pretty uneventful, but then a customer asks me about the rash on my arms. "The Home Depot doesn't care about allergies," I say, "as I do not have official paperwork apparently." This customer looks extremely concerned at this point, asking for my manager's name. At this point I was feeling nausea hitting me. I throw up in the trash can at the register, turn back to smile as well as I could and say, "I work under Bob so-and-so." The customer reassures me that I'll be okay and tells me I should head home. It turns out this guy, Nick so-and-so, was a higher up at the Home Depot's regional management and was my boss's boss. So naturally, I comply with the chain of command and head to the locker room to pack up. As I'm packing, Bob comes in, fuming and cursing at me, telling me I have no right to leave yet and that my shift is not over for another 5 hours. I simply say, "Nick told me to go home." Bob's face gets redder as he threatens to fire me, saying I was lying and tells me to go back out. I comply, knowing that I will see Nick on my way out. I pass Nick still in the orange apron, and he asks me where I'm going. I say that Bob told me to go back to work. Nick's expression goes from concerned to furious as he takes my apron from me and tells me I'll be paid for the full shift and to go home. I come into work the next day to see that Bob's nameplate has been removed from the office. I ask our HR rep what happened, and apparently, after I had left, Nick stormed Bob's office and proceeded to perform an audit in all of his past employee complaints. This guy had been throwing out complaints for the past 5 years. Needless to say, there was an opening for the store management position, and I was given a week's vacation for my troubles. As you can tell, my satisfaction was huge. And the next one is titled, "Fire me anytime. Okay boss, I will quit instead." Posted on r/MaliciousCompliance. This setting of the story: the office of a small plumbing company offering residential and commercial services 6 days per week plus emergency service after hours and Sundays. 3 employees that handle dispatching technicians, invoicing, scheduling, parts ordering, etc. We all have the same skill set and cover each other's backs. Technically, we've all been hired as dispatchers, take note. Administrative stuff like payroll, accounts receivable, accounts payable, marketing are all done at the head office, which has another 2 locations just like ours. The cast is the following: OP, aka me, 30-year-old guy, single, no kids, very flexible income; Smashly, late 20s, single mom, raising 3 brats between 5 and 10 years old, constantly leaving early, and missing days due to motherhood duties, doctor's appointments, school meetings, and so on. And then there is Howard, older than dirt. I think he helped Noah build the Ark. He has even more elderly parents with dementia and has an arrangement with his sister. He lives with his parents on Friday, Saturday, Sunday and works Monday to Thursdays. He was not available on the weekend under any circumstances. His sister lives with the parents Monday to Thursday, and Howard does not need that job, but if he leaves, then his sister will offload some of these days onto his plate, and he's having none of that. SOB, you will meet him later. So the way this worked was Howard would come in at 6 AM and work until 2:30 PM Monday to Thursdays. Smashly would come in and work 9 AM to 3 PM Monday to Friday after getting her kids off to school and leaving early to pick them up. She would cover the weekends remotely from home, and she also came in at 6 AM on Fridays since Howard was not in. Would come in at 11 AM, work to 7:30 PM Monday to Friday, and cover on-call emergencies after hours. My hours were altered from the 8 to 4:30 in my contract by verbal mutual agreement. And to be honest, I didn't mind. I like to sleep in. All went along fabulously for a couple of years until Smashly effed it all up. One of her duties was vetting and submitting timesheets for payroll, and head office noticed that one of the techs was consistently making more than the others. It turned out that Smashly was doing some horizontal dancing with one of the plumbers and was inflating his hours on the payroll. This all came to light when a customer called for a warranty issue on some work that was done, and we could find no records of this in our system. The customer insisted that our tech was out, and the lady on the phone had told them that there was a 20% discount for cash. Emails were sent to the head office, GPS records of the truck were examined, and their little scheme was discovered. She was puffing hours for the plumber, and they were making money on cash side jobs on the weekend. Both were fired for cause, and Smashly was stuck trying to raise 3 kids with no job and no unemployment. Or OP was meant to say no employment? Not sure. Anyway, so now it is just me and Howard. HR and owner called us into a meeting and explained that Smashly was no longer employed. We worked out a temporary arrangement for scheduling until a third person could be added to the team. Howard would work his usual Monday to Thursdays, staying until 4 PM on Monday and Tuesdays, and he would pre-dispatch any late calls, which we would try to avoid. The field supervisor for the plumbers would take after-hours calls directly on Monday and Tuesdays, and I would work Wednesday to Sunday and come in at 8 AM on Friday and work until my regular closing time. I would pre-dispatch the plumber's first calls on Thursday nights. I covered after-hours calls Wednesday to Sunday. We were assured that this was a temporary arrangement until a replacement for Smashly could be found. She was let go last May. With only 2 people covering the office, neither Howard nor I could take any time off as there was simply nobody to cover anything. September 1st, enter SOB. SOB was brought into the picture to handle administrative stuff, which, admittedly, had gotten a little loose when only Howard and I were covering. Things like missing POs on parts orders, missing packing slips, reports of revenue, and expenses being incomplete, that sort of thing, you know. We were far too busy just trying to keep things running shorthanded to deal with any of this stuff. Howard and I were also told that SOB would cover the dispatch board if required. He was an ass. He came into the shop claiming that he had been brought in to whip us into shape. I couldn't stand him from the beginning. Abrupt, aggressive, and with a vocabulary that used a lot of swear words. Just a dick, really. Whatever. Let him handle the outward-facing stuff, dealing with vendors, ordering parts, fleet maintenance, all of that crap, and he also handled timesheets for payroll and reporting to the head office. Fine, I'm good with that, and if I have to deal with his BS for a couple hours, 3 days a week, fine. I only worked under the same roof with him Wednesday to Fridays from 11 AM until his departure around 5 PM. It was endurable, and I had requested time off twice after he arrived and had been denied both times. Worthy of notice that my contract specified 3 weeks holidays a year, and up until he arrived I had only taken 2 days off in the spring. Fast forward to late November, if anything, SOP had gotten worse. He was really getting under my skin, and I had just about had enough. I had a teensy tiny issue with anger, and it was becoming more and more difficult to rein in my rage and kick the crap out of him. Then came the straw that broke the camel's back. I looked at my pay stub and saw that I was short 5 hours. I get paid not only for the hours I'm scheduled, but also for the time I put in covering after-hours emergency calls. This routinely put me up around 46 to 48 hours a week with overtime after 44 hours. So these 5 hours I was short were overtime hours, and I went to SOB on the Friday payday and asked for an explanation for this. He replied that he had been directed to bring overtime down, and if I check my email, I will see a directive that states that under no circumstances is anyone to work overtime in this office. This was clearly directed at me and me only, as Howard only put in 36 hours a week and didn't cover on-call, so why am I short 5 hours on this pay? I deducted 30 minutes of each day for lunch. But I don't take a lunch, I just eat a sandwich at my desk. Doesn't matter. I can take 30 minutes off your pay each day as unpaid break time. It's the letter of the law. But I actually worked these hours, are you serious? You're deducting time for breaks I didn't take? And by the way guys, just to quickly interject here, if your terrible boss did this, aka deduct time from the hours that you actually worked each day, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, let me know where you are watching from today, and don't forget to like the video. Thank you so much for your help. He once again said, "It's the letter of the law. You don't like it? Take it up with the labor board. I don't have time for this crap. Get back to your ducking desk and do your damn job." Alright, mother trucker, now it's on. Piss me off all you like, be a dick all you like, but screw with my money. You are gonna pay. I will F you over so hard. I have a good friend, Eric, that I've known since high school, who is an associate at one of the better law firms in town. I invited him out for a few beers and some wings on Sunday night and asked him if his firm handled stuff like this. And you know, it's amazing the amount of advice you can get for a few pieces of chicken and some beer. On Monday, I drove across town to a store and bought one of these. They are pretty easy to get, just Google Spice Shop for your city or order one off Amazon. I fiddled around with it and figured out how to get it to work. So on Wednesday I showed up for work at my usual 11 AM start time, and things in the office were business as usual. Until 4 PM on the dot, I took my sandwich, a Coke and a paperback novel and sat in my car. It didn't take long. About 10 after 4, SOB comes storming into the parking lot and demands to know exactly what the F I am doing. Taking my lunch break, I replied, "The phones are ringing off the hook and Jeff needs to process a credit card payment and Mike is just about to clear his call. I need you back in there right now." Sorry SOB, but if you're not paying me for my break time, then I'm not working through my break time. Either you handle it or I will take care of it. Checks countdown timer on cell phone, 17 minutes. And then I rolled the window back up. It was beautiful. Well, SOB turned red and stomped back into the office, and when I returned he demanded to know what the hell I thought I was up to. I'm entitled to a 30-minute unpaid break. You took that time off my sheet, so now I'm taking my break. I'm entitled to it. It's the letter of the law. He sputtered but had no response, so I went back to my desk. 5 minutes later, I get an email instructing me to take my break before 2 PM so I can be back at my desk before Howard leaves for the day. I replied to his email, BCC copying the owner of the company and HR, and I replied that I was unable to do so because, as per labor law, I was not entitled to a lunch break until 5 hours into my shift. So therefore I would continue to be away from my desk for 30 minutes beginning at 4 PM. I even snapped and pasted a paragraph from the labor board website to support my position. He came into my office and chewed me out at length. I would not budge though. I told him, "It's the letter of the law. If you have a problem with it, take it up with the labor board." On Thursday, just after SOB left for the day, I composed and sent him an email, again BCC copying in owner and HR, and I explained that I'd agreed to changing my hours on a temporary basis until a third person could be added to the office, and I also agreed to continue to work them until the transition was complete. As SOB was now firmly in the groove, I now withdraw my consent to the change of hours as contractually specified, and beginning Monday would revert to the hours in my contract. Friday I show up at 11 AM and SOB is waiting for me with a printout of the email. "HR and owner have been calling me. What the F is this all about?" Simple. When I was hired, my hours were in the contract, Monday to Friday, 8 AM to 4:30 PM, and they were changed by verbal agreement. Well, I withdraw my consent and stand on the hours specified in my contract. "F that, you work the same hours until I tell you differently." The hours of service in the contract are the letter of the law, contract law. If you want to change the hours, we can always renegotiate the contract. You want to alter the hours? Fine, but then I want to alter my rate of pay. There was a flurry of emails. He would send them to me and I would copy HR and owner on my replies since he wasn't copying them in at all. So I worked Sunday as usual and then showed up Monday at 8 AM and Howard asked me what the hell was going on because SOB was bad-mouthing me all over the place to him and to the techs, and one thing you should know is that a good dispatcher in the service industry is actually a rare thing. There are trucking dispatchers and taxi dispatchers and tow truck dispatchers, but finding one that knows how to balance plumbers and customers and solve problems is tough. I get along with all my plumbers and they are asking me what's happening, and I take the high road and basically reveal nothing. I get along with these guys quite well. Towards early afternoon I sent SOB an email explaining that there are some late calls. How late do you need me to work? He replies, until the calls are run. Perfect. So I end up working till 6:30, same on Tuesday but 7 PM, Wednesday too, sent emails both days and SOB told me to stay both times. He replied to me only and I sent an okay email reply copying the bosses in. By Thursday morning I had racked up 39.5 hours, 38 were in the office and 1.5 hours taking after-hour calls. About 10 AM I sent an email, again copying the bigwigs and detailing my hours for the week, explaining that at 12:30 PM I would have a total of 44 hours, and as per SOB's directive of such and such a date prohibiting overtime, I was left with no choice but to go home. Just before I hit send, I turned to Howard and said, "You might want to make some popcorn." SOB comes storming in and demands to know what the F. Well, SOB, I'm only following your directive. You said no overtime, right? Well, as of 12:30 I will be on OT, and unless you say different then I gotta go, so it's either rescind the no overtime or I head out. Your call. SOB is now screwed. He's been told to dial back on the overtime and knows he's gonna have to pay me OT for half of Thursday, all of Friday, and all of Saturday, or cover the dispatch board himself. Work the ducking weekend, damn it, you miserable screw-up. You will pay for this, okay? Okay, I will need that in writing. And I cannot work Sunday, you have to. Listen, you little shit, you don't tell me when I have to work. I tell you when you have to work and you're working Sunday. Nope, labor law says specifically that I get 1 day off in 7. I can show you. Since I worked last Sunday and I'm working every other day this week, I get this coming Sunday off. It's the letter of the law. Also, Howard cannot work it, I cannot work it, so I guess you have to. But my kid has a tournament on Sunday. Can't you bend the rules? Sorry, it's the letter of the law. SOB was a real treat to be around for Thursday and Friday, I assure you, and my little spy pen recorded every word out of his mouth. Monday I come in, I think this was the 26th of November, and the owner and HR and SOB are waiting for me. Owner and HR want to know what the hell's going on. They are getting reports and I'm being insubordinate and threatening to abandon my job. SOB wants to can me, and up until 2 weeks ago I was a model employee. I explain everything and refer to them the emails that I copied them in on. They ask what started this whole mess and I told them that SOB had said he was told to reduce overtime and took time off my check that I'd actually worked. He demanded that I go back to work on my break and that I schedule my break 3 hours into my shift, and I laid it all out. Owner gave SOB the stink eye and said, "I never told you to dial back overtime." They asked me if I'd be willing to go back to the hours I was working before. We can discuss it, but since this would be a major change to my employment contract, we will need to renegotiate it, including my rate of pay. Can you go back to those hours and then we'll schedule a meeting? No thank you. If I revert to previous hours, then you have no reason to schedule a meeting. We do the meeting first and then once we have a deal, you get the hours changed. Let us talk about it, we'll get back to you. Okay, but you need to discuss this soon. I'm taking the last 3 weeks of December as a vacation time. SOB explodes with owner and HR right there. You idiot, you're not taking any damn vacation without my approval, and I'm not approving a damn ducking minute of vacation for you. I turn to owner and HR. Well, by labor law, I'm entitled to vacation time yearly, and by contract law, I'm entitled to 3 weeks. So far, I've taken 2 days this year. I've requested vacation twice, and SOB denied it both times. I couldn't take it in between when you fired Smashley and hired SOB, because there were only 2 of us in the office. I get 3 weeks a year, and we're coming to the end of the year, and company policy is use them or lose them, so I'm using them. HR then says, "We will pay you out the accrued vacation time." I look at her and reply, "I don't agree to your offer. I'm entitled to this time. I want the time, not the money." She thinks for a minute and says, "We will roll it over into the new year." I don't agree to your offer. Once again, I'm entitled to the time this year, not next year. SOB pipes up, "But Howard already has 2 weeks booked off and I'm taking my family to Florida. You cannot take the time. There's nobody to run the shop." What? You're going to Florida, so you expect me to run the entire show alone, work 7 days a week, and you send an email saying no overtime? Are you serious? Back to a owner in HR. Look, I had to work a full year before I was entitled to a vacation. All of the plumbers have to work a full year before they are entitled to a vacation too. And labor law says you gotta work a full year before you're entitled to a vacation. And he's telling me that I'm not allowed to take my vacation because he's going to Florida and he's only been here for 3 months. Is that what I'm hearing here? You guys told me to hold off on vacation time until we got a third person, points at SOB. Well, there he is right there, and I'm taking the vacation I'm entitled to, no payout, no rollover, and if you want to renegotiate my contract, it can wait until the new year. And I stormed out of the office. I don't know what the rest of the meeting was like, but about an hour later, SOB starts chewing me out again, saying how he's out of thousands of dollars and now he has to tell his kids that they are going to Disney World. Calls me every name in the book as well. The next 2 weeks were hell. What an a-hole. Calling me names, telling me he won't rest until I'm out on my ass, and telling me I'm the worst piece of crap he ever worked with. He also threatened me that he didn't need a reason to fire me and that he could fire me at any time. This guy was on a serious power trip and certainly needed to be knocked down a peg or two. I had a feeling that there would be hell after my vacation, but you know what? I earned that vacation for working so hard. So I took my vacation time and I get back in January and there's a new face sitting at my desk and SOB is there with a crab-eating grin on my separation papers. HR put laid off rather than fired, so I had that going for me, which was nice. Now, where I live, if someone calls a former employer for reference, all the former employer is permitted to say is the time frame that the former employee worked there and whether or not he would be eligible for rehire. So a few days into January, SOB gets a phone call. Hi SOB, my name is Eric and we are looking at OP's resume here. He says you were his most recent employer. You're on speaker, what can you tell us about him? SOB goes off like a stick of dynamite, calling me every name in the book, saying I was a horrible worker, lying about missing time, telling all sorts of BS. I let him go on and on. Hey SOB, recognize my voice? He stops his ranting. Yeah, you mother trucker, I know your voice. Ever heard of the law officer of Dewey, Screw'em, Ober and Howe? They are lawyers and this call is being placed from their conference room. Nice talking to you SOB. The next call we are making is to the owner and getting his lawyer's name. It took a while, but a meeting got scheduled with owner, HR, SOB, owner's lawyer, me and Eric. And Eric explained that I was starting a claim for wrongful dismissal and this meeting was to explore the possibility of a settlement. We laid out everything, every email, a timeline of events and then the piece de la resistance. A supercut of the audio of SOB yelling, threatening, ranting and just being SOB. It was beautiful. SOB went white. Owner stared at him the whole time like he wanted to erase him from the face of the earth. They asked us to excuse them for a few minutes, so Eric and I went for a coffee and chuckled, and they texted us within 20 minutes to return. Owner's lawyer explained that they were admitting no liability or wrongdoing, but that as a gesture of goodwill, they were willing to offer me 3 months severance if I would sign a waiver. Well, unfortunately, Eric smiled, declined, and then played the tape from the conference room about the reference. He also mentioned that he was present at the time, and so were 2 of his colleagues, and all were willing to file affidavits to that effect. Another break, we came back and they upped the offer to 6 months. We countered with 2 years severance. Eventually we settled on 15 months with me to collect a check every 2 weeks as if I was employed based on an average of my hours for the past 6 months of my employment, and I'd racked a lot of overtime in those 6 months. They even tried to stick a clause prohibiting me from working for anyone in the same industry while this deal was in effect, but Eric spotted it and had it struck out. My skill set is in demand and it didn't take long for me to find another job doing the same thing, but for one of their competitors. It's awesome. These guys pay me one Friday and my working job pays me on the next. I'm racking up savings like you wouldn't believe, and Eric was pretty gentle with his billing. SOB? He was canned in no time. Between me and owner's network of contracts, the rumor mill has basically made him untouchable. He's still looking for a job, as far as I know. I did tell my new employer to shit-can his resume if they ever got one, but if I ever get a phone call asking me for a reference for SOB, all I can tell them is that I worked with him for 4 months in 2018. I cannot say more than that. It's the letter of the law. And the next one is also from r/MaliciousCompliance and is titled, My job told us they would pay more if an employee became bilingual. So for context, I had a job that had a standing policy that if you could speak at least 2 languages, you got a 10% raise. Well, I've always been a natural at languages, but I don't speak any of them really fluently. Usually just enough to get into trouble though. At a previous job I was disciplined for telling a supervisor that only ever addressed me in Spanish to please speak English in German. She wrote me up for speaking a language she didn't understand and was completely oblivious to the irony. However, I got a job now that I liked and saw that pay incentive because we only had so many bilingual employees in a job that frequently requires you to go to job sites where English is not really spoken. Well, I wanted to learn the language of my ancestors, so I picked up a Welsh class online, and while I didn't become fluent or anything, I spoke enough to carry on a rudimentary conversation. Which would be great if anybody here actually spoke Welsh, but I then went to HR to see if I qualified for the pay raise. You had to go talk to someone in management, and they would test your proficiency. I proceeded to tell them in Welsh that I could speak it and that my family came from Wales in 1745. The manager then told me that the policy meant Spanish, but as the policy didn't specify Spanish and just said bilingual, they honored the policy, gave me my raise, and then changed the policy immediately after that. I haven't ever had to use Welsh at work, but they had me translate for new hires who couldn't understand some of our clients, who speak with very accented Cajun and Scottish accents. And yeah guys, kudos to HR for honoring that deal. Good on them. And good on OP. I will see you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.